the heart. Two large veins collect blood from the systemic circulation. The superior vena cava drains the upper body, and the inferior vena cava drains the lower body. These veins dump deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. Blood passes from the right atrium into the right ventricle through a one-way valve, the right atrioventricular valve, also known as the tricuspid valve. Blood passes out of the contracting right ventricle through a second valve, the pulmonary semilunar valve, into a single pulmonary artery, sometimes called the pulmonary trunk, which subsequently branches into arteries that carry deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The blood then returns from the lungs to the left side of the heart, replenished with oxygen and cleared of much of its load of carbon dioxide. The pumping of the heart is a repeated cardiac cycle of relaxation and contraction of the atria and ventricles.
Right, okay, so this is the bit that shows the cardiac cycle. Okay, you will need a pen and a piece of paper or pad of paper, okay, and we will go through and we will look at the cardiac cycle using this animation. Okay, we will need to know what is happening in the different chambers in the different stages of the cardiac cycle. Okay, we're going to be talking about pressure, and we're going to be talking about the valves, whether they are open or closed. Okay, so you should have a pen and a piece of paper ready. Okay, right, I'm going to start. Okay, and we're going to start, I'm going to type it in here. Okay, we're going to start. The first process that we're going to talk about is atrial systole. Okay, so I've written it there and put it in the chat so you can see it, so you know how it's spelt. Okay, atrial systole. So we're going to look at what is happening in atrial systole. I will try and forward this until we can actually see some atrial systole going on. Right, okay, so here we have atrial systole, all right, and it concerns the atria. Okay, what are the atria doing in atrial systole? Anyone like to type it in, please, to the chat? They are contracting, Eva, yes. Okay, so in atrial systole, they are contracting. Now, look at the picture that you can see. I've paused it during atrial systole. Okay, stop. Yes, that is still atrial systole. Now look at the two valves. Look at the atrial ventricular valves. This is the right atrial ventricular valve. This is the left atrial ventricular valve. Okay, or this is tricuspid. This is bicuspid. Are those valves? I appear to have lost. I appear to have lost teams. You've gone, folks. I've lost you somewhere. There you are. Right, sorry about that. I'll go back to the sharing thing. I wish this was easier. Right, okay. So, what state are the valves in during atrial systole? The atrial ventricular valves. Someone tell me what the atrial ventricular valves are doing. Say what you see. It's on the screen. So they are open. Good. So the atrial ventricular valves are open. Yeah. So what does this tell us about the pressure in the atria compared to the pressure in the ventricles? So it's high in the atria compared to what in the ventricles? So your valves are like one-way doors. They will only open, okay, if the pressure in one side is higher than the other, okay? So let's just go through this. So we're about to go through atrial systole. There's the atria contract. Oops, gone too far. So the atria are now contracting. We've got high pressure in the atria at atrial systole, and this forces the atrial ventricular valves open. Okay, so pressure must be higher here than it is here. Okay, so it must be higher in the atria than it is in the ventricles. This forces the valves to open. Okay, and then that's obviously going to force and squeeze the blood from the atria down into the ventricles. Right, we're going to look at the next stage. Okay, now again I've lost the Teams window, so you're going to have to write this down. So the second stage, we're going to call it ventricular systole. Okay, so just like the systole that was spelt with the atrial systole, this is ventricular systole. Okay, this is ventricular systole, so the ventricles are now contracting. Okay, so we have higher pressure in the ventricles than in the atria. Now, because pressure is higher here, now remember, he said that the valves open one way. They can only open one way, so they can't open backwards. So when we put pressure on the other side, it closes them. So look at them now, they're now closed. Okay, but because we've got high pressure in the ventricle and leading up into the arteries, this forces the other valves, the semilunar valves, to open. So during ventricular systole, the atrial ventricular valves, the tricuspid and bicuspid, shut, and the semilunar valves open. Okay, and blood is forced out into the arteries, into the pulmonary artery and into the aorta. Okay, so just watch the arrows going there. Okay. Okay, right. So, and this leads us to our final stage. So following ventricular systole, we have a stage called diastole. Okay, diastole. I'll have to spell it for you because again I've lost the Teams thing for a reason, and that is D-I-A-S-T-O-L-E. Okay, so during diastole, both the atria and the ventricles are relaxed. Okay, this creates a larger volume and a lower pressure, and this draws blood in from the veins, from the vena cava and from the pulmonary veins. So blood starts to enter the atria, okay, the right and the left atria. Now, as blood comes into the atria, pressure starts to increase. It starts to rise in the atria, and the pressure in the atria is greater than the pressure in the ventricles because we've got blood in here filling the space, and that causes the atrial ventricular valves, or tricuspid and bicuspid valves, to open. Okay. Now, it's not long since blood has been forced into the arteries, so we've got a lot of blood in the arteries, so we've got high pressure in our arteries, and that pushes back and closes the semilunar valves. So during diastole, we have the semilunar valves closed because blood in the arteries is pushing back and closing them, and our atrial ventricular valves are open because blood is coming back from the lungs and from the body and filling the atria. Okay. And some of that blood will then start to trickle through and will start to fill the ventricles as well. Okay. So we'll just go through a few cycles of that. So you can see we're going to 8 ventricular, then diastole, then atrial systole, ventricular systole, diastole, atrial systole, ventricular systole, etc. Okay, so there basically is your cardiac cycle. Right, where have you gone? There you are. Found you again. Okay, right. So what I want you to do. Oh, sorry, let me stop sharing that and go back to PowerPoint. There. Okay. So, I want you to go to page 192. This is the new version of the textbook. I'm not sure what page it is on the old version of the textbook. It's probably going to be something like 187. But you'll need to find the page that says cardiac cycle. Okay, it might be 187. Nella, you've got the old book, haven't you? Is it 187 for the cardiac cycle? Or type in the page number that it is, if you can find it. Right, well, I'm going to assume that everyone's on the right page, that everyone has found the right page in the textbook. Yeah, so it's the page of the cardiac cycle, 186, thank you, Nelly. So it's page 186 in the old book, and it's page 192 in the new editions, okay? Then you will find a page on the cardiac cycle. What I would like you to do, as it says over here, is read page 192 of the textbook and briefly note what happens in each of the 3 stages of the cardiac cycle. Could you please pay specific attention to contractions, relaxations, pressure, very important, pressure, and valves, whether the valves are open or closed. Okay? So you've got the 3 stages there: atrial systole, ventricular systole, and diastole. Okay, that's one thing that we're going to do. It shouldn't take too long, I hope. Then read the flow of blood through the left side of the heart. Okay, which is down the bottom of that page, and you've got stages 1 to 6. Okay, so you've got the description of blood flow through the left side of the heart, stages 1 to 6. So read that through carefully. And then, given that the same thing is happening on the right side of the heart, write out a description for blood flow of the right side of the heart. Okay? So it's going to be an exact mirror image of what's happening on the left-hand side. So you should be able to write out what is happening on the right-hand side, because it's going to be exactly the same as what's on the left. Okay? Except you just need to substitute over the words left for right. And obviously you need to make sure that you are talking about the tricuspid valve rather than the bicuspid valve. Okay, and obviously the blood goes into different arteries, doesn't it? Okay, so just think about the subtle differences. And then finally, classify each stage 1 to 6 as either happening in atrial systole, ventricular systole, or diastole. Okay, so you could just simply write atrial systole is going to be 1 and 2, ventricular systole 3 and 4, and diastole 5 and 6, or whatever it might be. Okay, so that is probably going to take you in the region of, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. So where are we now? Looking for a clock. No clock in this film. Oh, yes, there is. Right. So I'll check how you're getting on in 12 minutes. Okay, in 12 minutes. So we're going to see where we are in 12 minutes. Okay. So I'll come back then. Stay online, so I'm not going away. But we'll just go through the Just make sure you're okay on what we're doing, and we'll do a quick summary on what you should have found out in about 12 minutes. Okay, see you in a bit.
Gordon.
Hello.
Hiya. Sorry, I just wanted to let you know that I have to leave at 12 because I've got a doctor's appointment.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.